What's up, y'all? What's up? I told y'all I was coming back. This time, I'm at a different place. Meaning, I'm not at the job. I'm at home. What's up? I hope y'all chilling. Today, Friday. Y'all already know it's time to wind down. Get your popcorn, get a good meal, get your drink on, social distance, keep your mask, stay clean. Y'all know how to act. But I told y'all that I was coming back because I wanted to talk about this NBA player that was signed to the Celtics. But that's just it. He was just signed to the Celtics. I'm going to explain all of this. Once I looked at the documentary and did a little bit more research, I wrote a couple of things down because as I read it, I'm going to talk about it. But when I looked at the actual documentary, it was sad. Len Bias is who I'm talking about. Len Bias may be in some of my subscribers' generation. Some of y'all may not even know who he is. I didn't even know who he was until I happened to look on YouTube and I was looking at sports, the sports part of the YouTube, and his name and face and things about him popped up. So I was just, just trying to figure out who he was. Like, who was he? Because I had never seen him, never heard of him before in my life until I seen it on YouTube. So I clicked on his documentary and I look at it and it was so sad. And it's crazy because I didn't know who he was, but the people that were in my mom and dad's time and, back then, they knew who he were. They knew who he was, and, he was a big thing. But I had no clue who he was until I happened to see him, and I was just interested in finding out who he was. And it was good at the beginning, and then it ended like a tragedy. It was a tragedy. But Len Bias is who I'm talking about. He attended University of Maryland. He was an all-American basketball player. The thing that caught me with Len Bias is that he was in the same range as Michael Jordan. From the things that I was seeing, he actually played against Michael Jordan in college 4 times. That's how he met Michael Jordan. Michael Jordan was a sophomore at the University of North Carolina at the time, and Len Bias was only a freshman at the University of Maryland. Let me tell you, if you happen to, Google him up, which I'm pretty sure you guys will, for the people that already know him, y'all, that was in that generation, you guys pretty much know the story. But for the people that don't know the story, he was only a freshman at University of Maryland. But when you look at his pictures, you would think, or you would have thought, that he was much older. He looked older than Michael Jordan. Even though they both were young, he still looked older than Michael Jordan. But Michael Jordan was like a sophomore, He was a little bit ahead of him. But anyway, they played in college. That's how they met. And then, as time went on, as them playing against each other and learning different things, of their talent and gift, because both of them were good. Len Bias was great. They were making it seem like, from what I was reading and what I was looking at, he was like another superhero. And I love Michael Jordan. I grew up, watching Michael Jordan. He's one of my favorite players. But Len Bias, they just was like, he definitely, was a challenge for Michael Jordan at that time when he played against him in college. And actually, in college, I think it was right here, I wrote down January 12th, 1984, at the College Park. He played against Jordan, and Bias scored 24 points. Jordan scored only 21. You know what I'm saying? Yeah, so I'm not saying Michael Jordan wasn't good. Michael Jordan's great. He's the GOAT. But at that time, he had somebody that I guess actually was challenging him as well. So it was just kind of like a shock to like hear that, because growing up, you know what I'm saying, it's a lot of great basketball players, but we all know Michael Jordan is one of the best basketball players of all time. So it was just kind of shocked to read and look at the documentary of someone being, on that same level as him. So it was just interesting. And Len Bias, he was one of the 10. He was one of the 10 players to win multiple ACC Player of the Year awards. So he was like that good. Like, he was just good. And people that knew him in the community, and working with him in basketball practice, all those things, like listening to them talk about him, it was just like he was almost like a superhero. Like, I'm not saying his community worshiped him, but it was kind of like they depended on him, like as far as sports. Like, they wanted to see him win. They wanted to see him be signed and play for their community, for whatever team that the people liked. Like, they wanted to see him win. Like, the university that he was at, they loved him. Like, it was just like he was just one of those type people. Like, he was one of those stars. And it's a lot of them. It's a lot of them that you hear about or see in a documentary, but Len Bias was one of them. And he was one out of the 2 overall pick in the National Basketball Association. So he was some serious business. He was serious. He was some serious business. So he was the one that had got signed to the Boston Celtics. They wanted him. 2 days after being selected in the Boston Celtics team, which was a dream come true, he made it. He made it in the 1986 overdraft for the Boston Celtics. That's a big thing. So he decides he wants to celebrate. He wants to celebrate, this is a big thing. Totally understandable. But how he celebrates is what causes me and the whole world to never see what could have been great. And I specifically read where it say, and I wrote down, because that was the main thing that picked my mind up, that picked up on my mind, and it stayed with me in my mind. The best NBA rivalry that never happened. I wrote that down, meaning Michael Jordan and Len Bias. I'm going to pause right there, and I'll get back to that. So once he got signed with Boston Celtics, he decided he wanted to enjoy himself. A couple of his friends / roommates, I guess it was his roommate. I know it was his roommates, and I don't know if it was other people from the team, but I know it was his friends / roommates. They wanted to enjoy themselves, so they did. Cocaine was involved, allegedly. I'm going to say allegedly. Cocaine was involved. Len Bias allegedly snorted some cocaine. He was trying to celebrate off of getting signed with the Boston Celtics. 2 days after. One of his friends say, hey, you need to slow down, I'm going to say that some of Len Bias's last words were, oh, I'm okay. I'm strong as a horse. I'll be all right. I'm good. He was just saying he was good after he allegedly snorted the cocaine. And then maybe about 5, 10, 15 minutes later, he collapsed in his dorm where they snorted, celebrating because he got signed. They said he collapsed, boom, had a seizure. Of course, the people that's there, which are his friends / roommates, they're trying to do what they can to help him. Remind you, this is unexpected, of course. So I can just imagine how fast-paced everything was. No one had time to think because it just happened so fast. They're focused on him and the seizure and trying to keep him alive. He has a seizure, goes in cardiac arrest. They take him to the hospital. Of course, they tried to revive him, keep him up, but they just couldn't do it. He had passed. He had a cocaine overdose. 2 days after he got signed with the Boston Celtics. A dream come true. He was a star. Like he would have been something from what I looked at on the documentary and what I've read. He was up there with Michael Jordan. He played with Michael Jordan. That's like a once in a lifetime opportunity. If you're looking at it from the outside, looking in, he was able to be that close to somebody that couldn't just meet him on a regular basis. You know, couldn't just meet Michael on a regular basis unless you have those connections or you're related to him and you're able to just, you just have those connections. So I say, he was able to play against Michael in his young prime, trying to get into the NBA. Those are classic moments. But, he passed off that cocaine overdose. They tried to save him. And I'm going to tell you, when I looked at the documentary and looked at pictures of the community after they found out, after it was announced to the public worldwide that he had passed, they were devastated. They were so devastated, it was like their world was over. Like they depended on him. And when I say dependent, like I said before, I'm not saying worship. It was just like they believed in him. Like it was just, they knew that this was going to be the star that comes out of the town that they lived in. Some communities is just like that. They're that close to where there ain't no problems. Everybody get along. And finally, when they have somebody that got a gift to get out, that's what I mean when they say, you know what I'm saying, that they were dependent on him. They believed in him. And they did the autopsy on him. And allegedly he had 12 grams of cocaine in him. 12 grams. 12 grams. It probably was too much for his body, shot up to his heart, like it said, and then went in cardiac arrest. And they tried to save him. They couldn't do it. They couldn't bring him back. They couldn't bring him back. And when I tell you again that the community, the family, of course, was devastated, but the community, you could just see them. Like, they was just so devastated. Like, I felt for them, and I didn't even know these people. I'm not even in that town. And I, looking at the TV and looking at it, I'm just like, dang, they really felt for this young man. This man was in college, freshman. And the world, his community, cared about him that much. So when he passed, it was crazy. So I had read a little bit more, and the people that were with him at that time, when he had the seizure and had the overdose, like, they were getting a lot of, like, allegedly threats. The community didn't like them. They felt like they were to blame for him dying, when it was all everybody's decision to hang out and celebrate due to him getting signed to the Boston Celtics. So, and they had to deal with that. They had to deal with the harassment for a little while. I'm pretty sure that messed with them mentally. But yeah, a lot of people were blaming the people that Len Bias was with for his death. Len Bias made that decision to do that. He wanted to celebrate. But at that time, I think the community and people, they're so angry that he had passed and missed out on his dream. And it was nothing nobody could do about it. They weren't thinking, it just was like, it's your fault. We gonna leave it as that. You know what I'm saying? This was the star, not y'all. And I think people were looking at it like that through emotion. And yeah, I had read a little bit about that allegedly. Like they were kind of like blaming the people that was with him. Like, it's your fault he died. Like he made the decision to do it. I read they told him to slow down, and he just was like, no, I got this. So that was the sad part about that. Rest in peace his soul, and I send condolences out to his family. But the question that I have for y'all, and for the Celtic fans especially, the diehard ones, if you're not a Celtic fan like that, that's fine. You still can listen to the video. But for the diehard Celtics fans, I got a question for you. But I do want to mention this. 34 years later, after his death, Len Bias was selected for the National Basketball of Hall of Fame. Like, that should say something. He was that good to where even after his death, he didn't even get a chance to play he still got entered into the Hall of Fame. That say something. And that lets you know right there, like, he was going to be a star. Now, the question that I have is for the Boston Celtics diehard fans, or if you just, you're just a fan, but the diehard fans, what if Len Bias would have never passed? That tragedy would have never happened, and he was able to live the dream and follow through with getting signed with the Boston Celtics, and just really just coming up. Would that? Do you think that would have changed everything to this day if he would have stayed alive? Do you think the NBA Celtics Boston team would have been better? Do you think you would have seen a change if he would have still stayed alive, being signed to them? Because I did read that after he passed, which was 1986, things was not the same with the Boston Celtics team itself. Like, they still couldn't get over his death. They were devastated too as well, because he had just got signed. So it was just like, I did hear during the documentary, I can't even say it, documentary, that things just was never the same with the team itself either. It kind of messed them up mentally, and kind of like, I don't know, I guess how they thought they could have operated if he would have been a part of the team. So it really devastated a lot of people, and it's crazy that it impacted people, complete strangers like that. But that's a blessing too. So, but yeah, it was just crazy. So that was the question that I had. Do you think if he would have never died, Len Bias, how do you think the NBA would have been now for the Boston Celtics? Do you think it would have been different, or do you still think it would have been the same? Personally, I'm not a Boston Celtics big fan. I'm not but I really think the gift and talent that he had, and looking at his documentary and everything, I really do think he could have changed a lot of things in the NBA, and maybe Boston Celtics team. I'm not going to say could be better, but, things could be different. You never know if he would have been alive. That was just the question that I wanted to ask. Like, do you think things would have changed or still been the same? But I did hear, allegedly through YouTube, people that played with him and was, close enough to actually work with him on the basketball team. They did say, after his death, it just wasn't the same. I guess they had to come up with another plan, of course, to try to enhance the team. Not saying Boston Celtics team wasn't good, but I know Larry Bird was signed to him, but it was just Larry Bird was getting older. So it was kind of like if Len Bias would have stepped in, that kind of would have gave Larry Bird a break. A little bit. Like, Larry Bird still would have been playing, but Len Bias would have took over a little bit, kind of would have still gave Larry Bird a little break. Larry Bird did his time. That's what I'm looking at it that way too. That's why I say, did it affect the NBA for in history, for how good he was, not just to give Larry Bird a break. I'm just saying, if he would have never died and been a part of the team, that would have gave Larry Bird a break. And at that time, Larry Bird was getting older. This boy was a freshman. So look at the difference. And that would have helped Larry Bird out. And I'm pretty sure he would have appreciated Len Bias. He did. A lot of them, the whole team, he got signed to him. He was that good. But, he lost his life, and rest in peace his soul. But that was the NBA player that I wanted to talk about, Len Bias. Again, a lot of older subscribers that are subscribed to me, if you're familiar with him, which I'm pretty sure you are, you understand him, you know pretty much the story of what happened with him. But for the people that really didn't know him, didn't know who he was, I just explained it to you. Yeah, cocaine overdose. 2 days signed. 2 days after. And I think that's what just kind of like messed me up every time when I was reading it went back to that. He just got signed with them. He just got signed with them. And that just stuck with me. So I was like, you know what? I got to talk about this. And finally, I did. So, yeah, that was the question for the true diehard Boston Celtic fans. Do you think things would have been different? Or do you think things probably still would have been the same if he still would have stayed alive? That's the question. So you guys, that's it for now. I do have another story. I did not forget about that Steve McNair story. Now that's crazy. And that don't have nothing to do with drugs. Like the cause of death. That was a crazy story. I didn't forget about that. That was crazy. But I'll talk about that. But you guys, don't forget to like, subscribe, comment if you want. If you're a fan of the Boston Celtics, please feel free. Answer the question that I asked, because that was really on my mind as well. How would the NBA would have been for the Boston Celtics team and just for the NBA period? Like, how much of a difference would have been? But it kind of tells you how it would have been. He's already been accepted into the Hall of Fame, even though it was 34 years after his death, but still. All right, I'll talk to y'all. Peace.